Hi there, I have played countless Game Jam games that don't have volume sliders. Don't do this. Sometimes I flinch so hard in a struggle to take off my headphones when I play these games. I mean, it's a pity I can't hear your sounds, but when it sounds like I have no choice. Luckily, it's easy to remedy this. Today I'm going to show you how to add a scalable volume system to your next Unity project. I'll even remember your preferred volume in between sessions. I'm here in a quick demo project. As you can hear, there's music in the background, and also, when I click this button, a sound effect plays. Now, as of right now, these sliders don't do anything, but obviously I'd like to have a music slider and a sound effect slider. Now, since every audio source here has a volume slider, we could just change the value here whenever we change the value in-game of the appropriate slider. This does, however, come with its problems. I know because I myself have made this mistake before. The problem is that if you happen to have one sound effect that happens to be much louder than the others, changing the volume in the settings doesn't really help because you can no longer hear the other sounds, which have now become too quiet. Now, you could export a whole new sound that is quieter, but it's a lot more work than is really required. The point of the slider is to fine-tune each sound individually in comparison to the others. Now, you could have some elaborate system that remembers what the volume was initially, and then whenever you change the slider, it changes appropriately, but that's much more work than is necessary if you do it with audio mixers. Also, when using the audio mixer, you get access to special sound effects, like the audio low pass, and many others which you can access at runtime. Let's open the audio mixer window. Do this by going to Windows, Audio, and Audio Mixer. You can of course dock this window as with any other. First, let's add a mixer. Just hit this plus button. You can see now there's this master audio group. What we want is also a sound effect group and a music group. You can add both of those by just going here and clicking the plus button. Now this uses the same hierarchical system as with the game objects, meaning that if you change the volume here on this master slider, all the children will change the volume. So if you wanted to, for example, do a subgroup of the sound effects, something like, I don't know, voices, you can do that. And then whenever you change the sound effects, it'll change both the sound effects and all the stuff underneath it, in this case, the voices. To assign a sound effect to one of these mixers, all you have to do is go to the audio source, and where it says output here with the audio mixer groups, you just pick the appropriate mixer, in this case, music. Here for the button sound, I'll put that into sound effect. Okay, let's hit play and see what happens. Okay, if you hit this edit in play mode button here, now you can see we can change the values here while the audio is playing. And you can see we can make it louder in the master node. And in this case, the music and also the sound effects will be louder. We can of course make it quieter or just change the individual audio groups to be louder or quieter. Okay, now let's make sure these sliders actually do something. Let's create a quick C# script. Okay, we're here in an empty script. Let's start by making some variables that we'll need. We'll need the audio mixer. Be sure to use UnityEngine.Audio. We'll need the slider. Be sure to use UI. And we'll just need a string to dictate what volume type we're going for, like whether it's sound effect or music or whatnot. Okay, let's make a method called SliderValueChanged. We're going to call this whenever we change the value of the slider, obviously. It's going to take a float as an argument. And then we'll just take our mixer and call the function SetFloat, taking in the volume type and of course the value. Okay, then we're going to, on start or awake or whatever, we'll make sure this slider calls this SliderValueChanged method. So we'll do Slider.onValueChanged.AddListener, and then we just add our function. Okay, let's save that. Now, before this works, we're going to actually have to do another quick thing in the mixer. Go to the volume and right-click it and click Expose to Script. You can see now here, expose parameters, there's one more. We can of course rename this, something like music volume. This is the string we're going to use whenever we want to change our volume. I'll do this for the other ones as well quickly. Okay, let's go to our slider here and add the script. We want this blue slider to be music, so we need to be sure to use the music volume here. So just type in music volume. We need to make sure to select the audio mixer and bring in the slider. Okay, let's quickly do this for the other one. Okay, when we enter play mode now, you can see that the slider does change the volume, but only a tiny amount. It changes it from 0 to 1 decibel. Now the thing about decimals is it's a logarithmic scale, meaning that 20 decibels is 10 times louder than 10 decibels, which is 10 times louder than 0 decibels. Also, the slider value itself only goes from 0 to 1, so this amounts to a tiny difference in volume. Okay, let's add this conversion then. We'll make a function, call it slider to decibel. It'll take in a float, and it'll just return mathf.log10 of our value. Okay, now all we have to do here above is add some brackets and a slider to decibel. Okay, let's try that out. Okay, if we go into play mode, you can see that the slider here doesn't really change that much. We'd like it to have a bit more impact. Also, whenever we go to 0, because the way log works, it goes to -infinity, and it doesn't like that here. So we'll need to add an edge case for that. Okay, let's start with the edge case first. So we'll just do mathf.clamp between our value here and -80 and 20, which are the minimum and maximum values on our audio mixer. Okay, then let's add a multiplier so we can make it have more oomph. I'll set it to something like 30 by default. Okay, all we have to do is multiply our value after we've taken the log with our multiplier, and let's try that out. Okay, that works great. You can see now as we change the value here, it changes accordingly on the logarithmic scale. Great, now 0 decibels is the maximum value. I would like to have that at something like 0.75, so let's add that quickly. Okay, let's create a public float and call it the DefaultSliderPercentage. Now this is gonna range between 0 and 1, so let's quickly add a range attribute. Okay, now to implement it, all we have to do is divide our value by our default slider percentage. And that way, for example, 0.75 divided by 0.75 will be the default sound. Okay, let's save that and try it out. Okay, you can see now the slider ranges between 0 and 1, which is nice. Let's hit play. Okay, now you can see that when we're at 0.75, the decibels are 0, and if we go higher, it's more, and less is less, obviously. Now to add that extra little touch, I'd like to have the game remember our volume when we leave play mode. Luckily, we can do this with PlayerPrefs. All we have to do is when our slider value changes, is go to PlayerPrefs.SetFloat, and then we give it a name. We can just use our VolumeType again, and feed it in our slider value. Afterwards, be sure to use PlayerPrefs.save, otherwise it will not save. Now, what this does is Unity will internally remember the value that you set here. So all we have to do now is go to the awake and set our slider value to the PlayerPrefs.GetFloat. And we feed it in our name is VolumeType, and that'll work. Now there is one exception at the very beginning. If it has not been set yet, this float will default to 0, which we don't want. Luckily, there's a way we can quickly check if it's the first time. We use PlayerPrefs.HasKey, again using the same name. And if PlayerPrefs does not have this key, so we put an exclamation mark in front of it, then we go to PlayerPrefs and set our float here, call it VolumeType, to our default slider percentage. Okay, great, let's try that out. And as we see, it automatically becomes 0.75, the default value. Now we can change this value, and then if we leave play mode and re-enter it, Unity will in fact remember it. There you go. If for whatever reason you want to reset the PlayerPrefs, you can go to Edit and Clear all PlayerPrefs. And if you hit yes, then it will go back to the default value in our case. Okay, now for one final feature, I would like to have a text somewhere that shows the percentage of the volume. Let's create a text object. Okay, I've created our two text objects here. Now let's go into Visual Studio. Okay, let's add a field up here. Now I am using TextMeshPro, so be sure to include the namespace, otherwise use the standard one. I'm going to create a simple text object here. And all we have to do is whenever we change our slider value, we have to take our volume text and change the value. We'll just take the slider value, multiply it by 100, and then add a percentage at the end. I will also be sure to quickly use math.round since we don't want to see all those pesky decimal places. Okay, let's try that out. Okay, don't forget to actually put in the correct text here. So here is the sound effect text, and here is the music text. Okay, let's hit play and try that out. Okay, now you can see if we change the value, it changes appropriately. Great. If we wanted to, we could also add some extra flair. If we go to our slider and look at the handle, we can actually make our text a child here of the handle. And that way we can have it move whenever it moves. Okay, cool. Now it stays directly above our slider. That's great. Anyway, that was today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're interested as to how I got the settings menu to scale properly, you can see my video on that over here. Make sure to subscribe. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you next time.